Yeah. I don't let her sit down. Call the meeting to order and roll call. Sherry,
Here.
Ben,
Here.
Hayden, here, Vernon,
Here.
Ty.
Here.
So everybody's here. Before I go on to the call to public, you want to introduce our new employees, Leslie?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you first our new full-time city attorney, Maria Garcia. Maria comes to us from the city of Lawrence, and we are just incredibly delighted to have her here and helping us. Today is day like 7. 5 work days. Okay. five working days. So we just couldn't be happier to have her on the team. So welcome, Maria.
Welcome, Maria.
And then next to Jean, we have our new planning and zoning director, Crystal Voth. And yes, we did steal her from Leavenworth County. So we just go ahead and get that out of the way. But today is, what is today? Wednesday? Today's day 3 for Crystal. So we could not be happier to have her with us, and you will see her at Planning Commission starting next month. And we have hit the ground running with both of the new team members with all kinds of projects and activities. So I'm very happy to have them both. So thank you for your.
Welcome, both of you.
Yeah.
Call to the public. Public comment will be allowed at the mayor's discretion during work sessions. This is exclusive of items requiring a public hearing. The mayor reserves the right to limit the total amount of time for public comment and or impose a time limit for each speaker at each work session. In order to facilitate input at the mayor's discretion, each eligible agenda item will be provided an opportunity for public comment after the staff and applicant presentations. Do we have anybody who wants to speak at this point in time? Not seeing anybody. I move on to the item number 1. The Mayor Drennan's proclamation recognizing the 100th birthday of Mr. Clyde Wilbur Grisham. Wilbur, you want to come on up? I don't know. Most people, I've always called you Wilbur, so.
We need to read.
Stand up here. Yeah, I can do that. Let's see here just a second. I'm not sure. Sherry, you want to go ahead?
Sure,
Read that.
be glad to. Whereas longevity of life is a blessing for an individual and for a community which benefits from the knowledge, creativity, and experiences this individual brings to all. And whereas the city of Basehor recognizes with respect and admiration the contributions of senior citizens to our community. And whereas the city of Basehor recognizes with much admiration for the contribution of all veterans to our community, the freedoms we enjoy as Americans have been purchased and maintained at a high price throughout our history. And whereas we owe a great debt to those who have served in defense of this nation, and whereas Mayor Drennan and Basehor City Council for the city of Basehor wish to honor resident and World War II veteran Wilbur Grisham for his service to this great nation. And whereas Clyde Wilbur Grisham will be celebrated on January 23rd, 2023 in honor of his 100th birthday.
Now therefore be proclaimed that I, Dick Drennan, Mayor of the city of Basehor, and on behalf of the Basehor City Council and the citizens of Basehor, honor Clyde Wilbur for his long life and prosperity and wish him many, many more. Hereby proclaim January 23rd, 2023 as Clyde Wilbur Grisham Day. In witness whereof, I set my hand and affix the great seal of the city of Basehor, Kansas, this 11th day of January in 2023.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I think there's some others that want to go in. Come on, get up here. Take Wilbur. I'll take the. Oops, sorry.
Got wide lens.
Panoramic.
Oh, come on, Mayor. Get in there, Mayor.
Actually, one with Mr. Grisham's wife, maybe? Please. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Friday, I'm sorry.
Get on in there.
And maybe one of, all council, please. Yes. Great.
You'll be all smiled out.
Hang in there. Social media. Get Facebook, you know, follow us.
Yeah, no, I know. I'll see what you're
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. All right. Thank you, council members.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Well, before Wilbur leaves. I've met Wilbur 23 years ago when I first got to Baser. And we've been in the same church for all that time. And he used to harass me about being an E7. He used to harass me about being an E7. I know you have to change. And I just want to say, sir, it's my pleasure and honor. That's from one E7 to another. How many of you realize you're sitting on Bill Black's job?
Oh, huh.
Used to be right in.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
2 years ago.
I need to use that. I want to do it like that. Incredible.
Awesome.
Okay, moving on to item number 2, request from Leavenworth County Port Authority for financial contribution to Project Brady, AKA UPS Store, proposed project location at 15721 Pinehurst Drive, Baser, Kansas. Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor. With us this evening, we have Lisa Hack, the Executive Director for LCDC and also of the Leavenworth County Port Authority, as well as Dan Gutschall, who is the chair of the, I always get the name of it wrong, spec building loan program. Okay. To discuss the project request that is in front of you this evening. I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Hack to just give you kind of an overview of the program and just a refresher on the project that is being requested for your consideration. I would note that we're not asking you to even give us consensus tonight on a specific direction, because I was just informed at the beginning of the meeting, their legal counsel has provided some information to them on the opportunity to make payments, perhaps not being a legal mechanism. So I think the request will come back to you in a future month, perhaps with a different mechanism requested, and perhaps one that's actually within the structure of your current incentive policies, specifically probably an industrial revenue bond. So, or as we sometimes refer to them, IRBs. As you know, because we just recently had an IRB in 2022, there are a number of steps that need to be undertaken in order for the council to properly consider an IRB request. And we don't have any of that information prepared or available for you this evening. Again, I just learned of that, I think, literally moments before this meeting kicked off. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to just kind of talk a little bit about the project itself and the Port Authorities program.
Lisa, Dan, thank you both for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, city council members and staff. Thank you so much. I'm pretty much going to say pretty much the same thing, so I'll be really quick in the interest of time. The primary components of this request are going to be presented to you. Mr. Dan Gutschall, he is the chair of the industrial spec building program, and he's going to share with you those. We do value transparency, so if you have questions or if you require further explanation, please let us know. Mr. Dan Gutschall.
Thank you.
Lisa, council, pleasure to be back. It's been a while since I've been here to make a presentation. I wish we could come more often.
Yes.
We have a situation where we have an opportunity to grow basically. We need your help in doing this. As you know, the Port Authority and LCDC are primary goals stated at the very top of this brochure is to improve opportunities for Leavenworth County, the tax base for industrial, in this case, commercial and retail area. And so we adopted a program back in 2018. And we've had a few applications submitted. This happens to be one that was officially presented to the Port Authority on in mid-November. And so we're going through the steps, and there are a lot of them that we have to do. I will tell you, we're in the very preliminary stages. And I'll explain that in more detail as we go along. And basically, you can see a schematic. You've probably seen this before. It's a UPS store, and there'll be a couple of the rental bays that will be available there. The applicant is Mount Biz LLC, which is Barsha Henry, that's the manager. And I guess it was December 2nd that we received the application. It's for a building. It's about 5,000 square feet, located on Pinehurst Drive. It'll be a new building. It's a vacant lot at this particular time, so it'll be a major addition. This is why it qualifies for this particular program, because it's a new building. This program does not qualify for existing buildings, for example. This program is tailored more to a small business in a community than it is for the larger businesses. So this is a tactic that we've tried to put together. We would have loved to build buildings. We can't afford to do it. We've reached out to our communities to see if they would do it, and they had challenges doing it. So we came up with an alternative, and this is the alternative. And I need to educate you a little bit on what we're doing and why we're doing it, and identify what your role will be in the process. Next slide, please. This is the official application. It's not a real long application, but this is some of the details. You can read them. I think you have a copy of that packet in your materials. Next slide. There's a 5-step process that we have to go through once we receive an application. We're in step 1, the very beginning of step 1. And so we got several other steps. We First thing we have to do is provide funding for this particular stimulus. Port Authority is willing to front the money. It's a $200,000 front that we will provide. It's in the form of a loan. It's a 0% interest rate. It's got deferred payments until the lead bank is paid off. This was designed this particular way to allow the small business owner to overcome the capital barrier needed to start a new business. As a commercial lender, I run into that an awful lot. People come into me and say, I want to start a new business. I say, great, what can we do to help? And they start talking about the business. So I say, what do you need from us? I said, well, I need 25% down. And the conversation ends. Because buildings are very, very expensive. And most entrepreneurs, particularly at this level in business, don't have that kind of cash because they've been pouring it back into the business as they earn it. So this is a way to help stimulate small businesses and an opportunity to build buildings. We wanted to do this because why this is important is the building becomes your repayment source. And I'll talk about that in a minute. The loan, that's a different issue, and I'll explain that as we get a little further into this process. The next step that we'll go into, and we'll probably get started in the next week or two, is we'll go through a due diligence process on this particular applicant. They've already submitted information from their lead bank, and we'll consider that. They've been, we'll get some details from them, and we'll evaluate that. The LCDC will to see if it's a viable enterprise they want to make a loan to. If they do, we proceed forward. If they don't, project stops, the application is denied. After the review committee reviews it, they'll make a recommendation to the LCDC executive committee. If they approve it, then it's officially approved and funded for the loan to them. This loan is a subordinate loan to the primary lead bank that makes the loan. This project's about a $2.6 million project, a little bigger than even I thought it was going to be when I first started talking to Varsha about a year ago on this particular project. So it's a fairly involved project, and it's not all just building. You know, there's a lot of other components that have to be funded. Once approved, we'll prepare the documents, assign the loans, we'll make sure it's forward positions to the lead bank, and they will proceed forward from there. No payments have to be made to the LCDC loan until the lead bank is paid in full. So if they pay as agreed, LCDC won't see any money for 25 years. That's how long the lead bank loan is. Now, my experience tells me that it won't go that long. When they get so far, they'll either want to expand or grow, and they'll refinance. But at worst, it's going to start paying back in 25 years. What's good for the city of Pacer, as soon as the building is up, you start receiving tax revenue from that building. Let's go to the next slide. I'll elaborate more. This is a flow chart that kind of shows where we're at in the process and some of the things that are going to happen. Right now, the two shaded boxes is where we are at. We're looking to get a commitment, City of Pacer, to fund a portion of the $200,000 that the Port Authority is going to contribute to the loan. Port Authority gives the money to LCDC, LCDC makes the loan. So unfortunately, the Port Authority doesn't have a unexhaustible source of money. I wish we did, we'd give it all to you. But, and we have no way of making money. We can't levy bills or do anything like that. So we have to earn our money. A lot of it comes from Leavenworth County. They provide nice funding to us every year. Great supporters. Thank you, Doug. And we appreciate what we can do, but our resources are limited when we start handing out $200,000 at a time. So one of the designs of the program was we'll share the expenditure to fund this particular loan so that that entrepreneur can get over that capital barrier to build a building. This is where it comes into play. Any questions so far? Clear as mud. Okay. Let's go to page 6. We'll come back to that page. One more. There we go. This is the formula that we use to determine who pays what and why. in this particular case. If you look at this, the anticipated appraised value is 90% of the cost of the improvements, $1,325,000. That's how much appraised value will increase on this particular property. That results in total taxes for this particular project of $48,201 a year. $41,172 is new money to the process. Down below that is your portion or portions broken out by individual city, county, school district, library, township, state. And as you can see it in the line item city of Baser, you go over 3 columns to go back. There you go. New taxes, $9,585. That's what this building is expected to generate in your community going forward for probably 35 to 45 years is the revenue that will generate for Baser. And that doesn't include any sales tax that may be generated, doesn't include any benefits from employees that are hired where they live and that kind of thing. That's just real estate taxes only. And that's using today's mill levy, using the appraised value. We have to guesstimate on a few things, like the value. The county will not appraise a building until it's built, which is very understandable. So their guidance to us is you use your actual cost. We discounted it another 10%. So the actual return may be slightly higher. But the only thing I will guarantee is it won't be that number. It should be very close to that number. So you can see the benefit of adding this building to your community will have a financial gain for you. $8,000 in the scheme of things, not a big amount of money, and I get that. But you gotta have one before you go to 2. And so forth and so on. So this is the opportunity that we can. Then we get into the calculations. We use present value calculations on a 10-year period of 3% present value. And total potential in today's dollars is 351,000. We discounted that to 75%, it's 263, but we have to cap it. Love to do 263. But there's a reasonableness about how much we can afford to do. So we've capped the process at 200,000. There's only so much money that cities, counties, Port Authority can provide. And so that's the reason for the cap of 200,000. Some other projects that we've looked at have been a little smaller than the 200,000, but in this case, because the size of the project, the dollar invested, 200,000 is the cap. Then we break it down into the shared portions down here at the bottom where the sources of stimulus funds. And this is where the 46,563.70 comes from. Leavenworth County, a request will probably be made to Leavenworth County for 9383 sometime in the future. And the Port Authority would be 104,053. Now, those are the numbers if everybody participates. Up front, you got to do some logistics here. This loan's got to be made here in probably spring 2023. Building's not going to be done until fall, winter of 2023 or into the spring of 24. So we got to provide the $200,000 today. The risk to you is if you give your money to us today and the building doesn't get built, you're high and dry. So we don't ask for money from you until the building is built. Then you know that you're going to get a tax base increase and that's going to pay you as time goes along. So although we're asking for a commitment today, we're not going to need any money till late 23, early 24 at that particular time. So far, so good. Clear as mud. There'll be a test. Let's go to the next slide. This is the example of the payments anticipated on this particular project. New taxes every year is $9,585.67. It accumulates, takes approximately 5 years at this pace. It could be higher. The payments or the taxes could be higher. Payments could be lower. So it may be 4.5 years and maybe 6 years. There's too many variables here. We can't nail it down, but based on the best information that we have today, and that's available to us today, we're looking at 5 years to pay back the request that we're making from you. After that, all the rest is yours. You get to keep that and add that to your coffers. Like I say, I'd like to be here every month doing it. That's not gonna happen. Like I say, we started the program in 2018. You're the second project that's gone this far. First one was done with the city of Leavenworth. Yours is the second project at this particular point. Okay, let's go back to slide 5. There you go. Now, we want to work with you. We consider you a partner in this particular process. We have our goals and the interests are mutually aligned. We have options. I know you've got tons of money laying around, don't have anything to do with it. I wish. So there's always the option, you can just write us a check for the one-time 46,563.70. More practical, more pragmatic approach is to do it in some type of installments. We were going to strike up an agreement. We worked with Leslie on this to enter into agreement, pay that a dollar amount, that $9,585 over 5 years. Unfortunately, we've been advised late today that that is not compliant with the cash basis law. So we can't do that particular rule, unfortunately. Thanks. Thank you, Kansas statutes. So the options available to you that I'm aware of, and there may be others, but the ones I'm aware of is industrial revenue bond. That's the one that is the most popular. The other is a series of short-term notes that could be issued and paid and renewed if necessary. Don't recommend that. It's a little sloppy, but still a way to do it and get it done. So we're suggesting today that we get a resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds. That will be your commitment. Like I say, we'll get that. Leslie said that there's due diligence that you have to go through to issue industrial revenue bonds. It'll probably take 30, 60 days to get that done. We'll try to fast track it as much as we can. And if that is done, we'll get that resolution of intent done. You actually won't issue bonds until later in the year, way later. So the building is built. That's when we need the money. From there. So collectively, we work together. We bring your resources, Port Authority's resources, county resources all together, and we improve the capital base of the business or of the community, excuse me. And we start helping new business get off the ground and get started. Questions? Concerns?
Why do you look crazy? I'll go last.
You're looking for funds from the city of Basel for approximately $47,000. Has this already gone through Leavenworth County and been approved for the $49,383?
Presentation has not been made with Leavenworth County at this particular time. We will make that presentation. I don't have it on the agenda just yet, but it'll probably be spring of this year that we'll sit down with the county commissioners and visit about options that are available at that time.
Thank you.
What was the overall split? How was that determined? The Basel versus Leavenworth County percentages?
We took the, I can't remember the formulas, but we took the mill levies for each of the different entities and did a percentage of the 200,000 based on the percentage of the mill levies that each entity set, like Baser's 33.873, county's 35.94, and we divided that up. Yeah, I think, I forget what the ratio is for the port. Basically, Port Authority takes care of everybody else, the state, school district, and everything else.
How many businesses do they think can be in the building?
My understanding, there's the UPS store and then 2 other bays. There'll be probably about 1,200 square feet roughly. I'm not real clear on that particular aspect of it, but there is 2 bays.
Any idea what she's looking at for doing in the other businesses?
No, we don't have that information yet. We're way early in the process. We will get to that, but I haven't done this before. Most people don't pledge to rent an empty lot. They wait till the building is built And then they start communications after they see buildings in the air. It's first come, first served. She has expressed, I think, to you that at least that she has some interest. But there's a big difference between interest and actually signing a contract.
And UPS is on board with that. And I mean, is there going to be a problem with her? Is she still have to go through all the paperwork with them on that?
She's already been through that. Might said something, gone through that process, the franchise process.
And Miss Henry did write in the chat, it says that she's planning 3 businesses, including her business, and it says the rest of the lease space will probably be local offices.
Okay, Dick, my turn.
Yeah.
Before-
Walmart.
Oh, go ahead.
I-
Yeah.
I feel like we've seen the UPS store before. Was there some other
Mm-hmm.
request related to that?
Yes, so the city council actually approved the final site plan for this project this summer. And I know Councilman Garver has comments. I would just say from a staff perspective, I don't know that I would recommend that you make any kind of commitment. You know, I understand that work sessions are not binding, but it would not be staff's recommendation that you make notions of commitment this evening. I think we've received some information that's a little different than the format the request came to you as. And I think we need time to study that and really prepare probably a packet that anticipates that information for your consideration. I would say what would probably be helpful is if what is the council's overall temperature towards continuing a conversation about whether or not you desire to produce or provide incentives for this type of development.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start with in general, that basically this is a 5-year tax abatement to help somebody walk into and create a new building in our city and open up 3 more businesses. That's smaller than other things we have considered for a number of years of abatement. So I'm in favor of continuing to work. Most of my questions are logistics of not understanding the program. So to the owner of the property, to yourselves, if I sound on a question like I'm questioning things, it's truly just logistics. It's not the concept of trying to work with the company and figure out how to do this. Do we really have to issue IRBs for $50,000 to try to pull this off?
Well, that's again, kind of my overarching question. I really want to work with our legal counsel and probably the Port Authority's legal counsel to understand what is the act and what are the different mechanisms available to the city if you have an interest in providing
Seems like
that
doing
support.
bonds and stuff's gonna put another expense involved in this. That's
And
and
we,
bond counsel and other things that makes this more expensive.
well, and you do have a policy that for industrial revenue bonds that include application fees and it includes origination fees and it includes the issuance fees, and the city does not incur those costs. So there are costs that are associated with IRBs in the traditional sense. And we would want, again, to have an opportunity to fully vet that out before presenting that to you. I mean, this is kind of very much on the fly at this point, which is not my preference on
Again,
incentives.
For the owner and everybody else involved. Again, I am in support of trying to get a new building and new businesses here in town. It's a 5-year abatement or less. I'm in favor of all of that. But I'm also in favor of let's give our city staff and everybody a chance to kind of work out the best way to work through it. But in general, people to know I'm in favor of figuring out something to do here.
That's the best we can for that. You know, we understand this is fresh for you. We're in the very early stages of this particular process. So we understand the questions. They're very legitimate and we understand. Every community is different that we deal with, and every community that we deal with has a different approach that they use. And so whatever works best for you, we're here to help as well.
And I'm just one.
Hey, do you want to go ahead and chime in and kind of give what you want? About
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to more information. I think I've expressed before, I'm generally opposed to incentives and abatements, but 5-year payback period is pretty enticing. Like you said, we want more businesses here. And if it's something that makes sense after we see the final details, I definitely would not rule it out.
I'd say, let's continue talks, follow the correct process through the city, right? As Leslie is asking, and let's continue the discussions as we move forward.
Sherry?
I'm, interested obviously in growing Baser and new businesses to town. But since it looks like we've got some things that came up last minute, we probably need to look at all of that before we make any decisions.
Vernon?
Being a member of the Port Authority Board and seeing how successful the first project was that we were able to assist with, I see a lot of positives, with this coming in. This would be one of the investments from Leavenworth County into our county. So, it is just trying to understand, as Ty had said, the logistics of it. But I think I've shared this in Port Authority meetings, and I'm sharing it again now. I am in favor of trying to get this project moving forward. However, the caveat is we received new information, so we need to really do our due diligence, in processing that through.
Smokes, who we go for. Appreciate the vote of confidence, and we'll work with Leslie and Maria, and try to get this put together and get something back to you. Depends on where it goes, probably February.
Okay.
It is what I suspect and everything. If you have any questions in the meantime, send them to Leslie. She's got all my contact information. We'll be glad to forward whatever details you're interested in taking a look at.
Absolutely.
Dan and Lisa, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. And I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of questions for you before this is all over.
No worries.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Lisa? I need a minute with Lisa.
You guys want to get the popcorn ready?
Thank you for that minute.
Oh, no problem. Moving on to item number 3, capital projects funding discussion, presentation by Baker Tilly and Gilmore and Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. Maddie Waldeck, Assistant City Administrator. This is a follow-up conversation from several work sessions that we had at the end of 2022. As you know, we studied the conditions of our roadways over the last year and adopted a plan to improve those roadways, keep the good roads good, and then also address some of the ongoing concerns. At December's regular meeting, this council approved the use of fund balance to fund year 1 of improvements. And we were tasked with coming back with options for funding years 2 through 5. We certainly heard your feedback in the last several meetings, and we're very excited to have Jack Ryan Feldman from Baker Tilly. We also have Mitch Walter from Gilmore and Bell. We've got a lot of information to present. We stand ready to answer your questions and receive your feedback. And we're very excited to have our third-party professionals here tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jack.
Thank you. And thanks for having us here. Again, I'm Jack Ryan Feldman, Director with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. By way of introduction, or maybe perhaps reintroduction, depending on your perspective, we're the city's independent municipal advisor. What that means to you is that during the bond issuance process and capital planning process, we're your fiduciary. That's the standard of advice that we're held to. So we're putting your interests in front of our own. And so that's the spirit with which, we're here talking about, funding your capital needs and the potential options that you have. And then also Mitch Walters here from Gilmore and Bell as your bond counsel, and certainly the same spirit is there. Maddie teed us up great with the capital projects funding conversation. I think we can move in. Just wanted to give kind of a 30,000-foot review of a lot of the conversations that have been held to date. You all have recently gone through the big task of doing the comprehensive plan 2040. There's a lot of, outcomes, contained within that. You've also done the complete street inventory and a lot of potential costs to consider to get your streets up to the condition that you're looking to get them at. The transportation plan, which identifies a very large undertaking as it relates to trails. And then also the Field of Dreams Special Committee recommendations. There's additional capital needs identified through that committee process. And, these aren't the only ones, but, these are just kind of front of mind, what's happened most recently with you all in front of the council level. Now, in order to implement all or some of this, you've got potential levers to pull at different scenarios. Number one is, do you fund this portion with property taxes? 1 mil is worth 110,000 or so. And so when you're talking about funding projects via property taxes, that's the one lever you have. Grants. So far, the city has done a great job of identifying and pursuing grants, and I believe you've already obtained up to $16 million worth of grants. You can't grant your way out of this at this point. There's other levers that you're going to have to pull, but certainly you're going to take a look at additional grant opportunities as those come down the pipe through ARP or Inflation Reduction Act or the infrastructure bill through the state. We'll keep our eyes and ears peeled. Additional sales taxes, this is another lever. As we'll talk, you've got the potential to do a 1% sales tax in one form or fashion. And 1% is equal to potentially $1.4 million annually over the next 10-year period. There's also user fees and special districts. These are kind of more specially designed processes where generally on smaller projects where you've got a smaller project with a smaller user base, sometimes you can kind of craft a solution there where you've got some user fees for the people who are benefiting from that are paying for that. I neglected to go through some of the pros and cons of the property taxes. Obviously, with property taxes, it's a very stable revenue source. It's through one perspective, it's a fair and equitable way of distributing taxes via the property tax values. As I said, it's stable. It's also sometimes the least popular to raise. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but that's certainly one lever that you have. As it relates to sales taxes, this is something that compared to property taxes is usually a little bit more palatable for communities to take on. It's also more economically sensitive to the economic conditions and can be a little bit more variable compared to property taxes as a source. And so that's something to keep in mind. One of the pros for sales taxes is, depending on the retail mix that you have, such as gas stations on your main thoroughfares, your tax base is a little bit larger than just the citizens of Basehor. It's people passing through, grabbing coffee and gas at Casey's as they pass into Kansas City and vice versa. So those are kind of the big picture pros and cons of all the different funding sources as you're considering implementing that. An important thing to think about is your revenue mix as it stands to fund capital projects. Right now, sales tax is the larger component at 41%. Property tax is currently at 30% of your capital funding. Grants is at 25%. And then the excise taxes are currently at 5%. And so this is just something to keep in mind as you're going forward, when you're considering new levers, just keeping that mix diversified and making sure that you're not putting all of your eggs in one potential basket. We mentioned and highlighted before the big studies and all of that you've undertaken, the large planning processes. And these are some of the projects that are more front of mind in the short to medium term and some associated dollar amounts. I know Maddie was happy to have some additional context for some of these projects.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. At the last city council meeting, one of the questions was if the city council was interested in pursuing a sales tax. the price point for the roadway improvements is $8.1 million over 5 years. What are some of our additional needs or amenities that the community desires that we could use those funds for? And so Leslie and I sat down and went over all of our planning documents. We went through all of our meeting notes over the last several work sessions about things that the community would like to see. And we just plugged in some of these options. So certainly the Field of Dreams recommendations, $500,000 is currently programmed. This would be in addition to that. Certainly the $500,000 out of the Field of Dreams Committee is a great start. But we certainly heard from the community that maybe more is warranted. We, of course, have the Complete Streets Inventory Project, $8.1 million through 2027. In the active transportation plan that was adopted, there are recommendations for a pretty extensive trail network. $19 million of that does not need regional coordination. So that's within city limits. And not having to cross into Leavenworth County or anything of that nature. Sentinel Park is in the capital improvement plan, but is currently unfunded at $1.75 million. We've heard from this governing body that enhancing public safety is incredibly important. So we wanted to make sure to keep that at the forefront. Updates to the city park. We've heard some feedback that maybe some new playground pieces or maybe some parking updates or something along those lines with our existing park would be good. Basehor Town Center, just right across the street. Of course, the city owns a lot of property over there, and maybe developing some open park space or some park amenities would be desirable. And then also some additional park amenities at the Civic Campus, particularly the Memorial Gardens and the amphitheater. And so when we were looking at these items, we were really focusing on what we call the 3 Ps: parks, pavement, police. And so when we're thinking of, okay, with the roadways, pavement, what are the other things that we could fund with those dollars if a special sales tax would be desirable to this governing body? So we have included some interactive tools that I think Jack is going to go over. So I think if we could go over to the, I'll pass it over to Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, previous slide. So as I understand it, the conversation is kind of geared more towards what are our potential sales tax options. We're, casting the other levers aside for the time being. So not to stomp on Mitch's talk show, but you've got a 1% general sales tax or a 1% special sales tax option available to you to pursue an election for. The special sales tax is a 10-year sunset. The general sales tax, you have the option to not have a sunset, but you can also certainly elect to have a sunset on that as well. And I mentioned it before that over the 10-year period, the CIP model projects an estimated 1.4 million average annual revenue. I think it's about 1.1 million in the first year, and then with the forecasted growth that's within the model itself, it averages out to about 1.4 million. Next slide. Usually the first question that I hear is, you're starting to consider an additional sales tax is, so how do we compare with our neighbors? We want to make sure that we're being competitive as it relates to our taxes. We don't want to, as we're trying to attract additional retail to our community, we don't want to be anti-competitive with our neighbors. So I took a look at a map and went in every direction to the next town over. And as you can see, Kansas City at Legends is currently at 10.7% sales tax. That's including some special sales tax districts that are there. Shawnee's at 9.6. Bonner is at 9.25. Tonganoxie is also at 9.25. Lansing is at 8.95. Although they just passed a 0.45% sales tax for the aquatic center that they're going to build, and that is going to be begun to be collected on July 1st of this year. And then Basehor is currently at 8.5% sales tax. And if you were to consider a 1% additional sales tax, that would put you third. But I would note that I would imagine that where your citizens are going for most of their retail is probably east to Legends and south to Shawnee. And so you're not necessarily going to be at a competitive disadvantage as it relates to sales taxes when you're kind of making that comparison. So that's just the only observation I'd note there. Maddie noted the CIP model. We've worked with her and she's put a lot of work into updating the CIP model to demonstrate the more direct linkages between enhanced revenue and enhanced level of services. And it'll be interactive and you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to see, as additional revenue comes online, you'll be able to see the additional projects getting programmed over and above what's currently being programmed at baseline. And then also you'll be able to see how your cash balances relate as it relates to your fund balance policy and all the projects being funded. And so I don't know how much orientation Maddie you want to do now, but certainly up top is your current revenue sources for your 3 capital funds. Down here in your expenditures is all the things that are currently budgeted at your current service levels. And then down here below is where you'll be able to program dynamically additional programs, additional services. And then also as, with all these things, the models change and revenue comes in higher, lower than expected, you'll be able to dynamically go in there and update your CIP as time goes on in the out years, because obviously, forecasting years 6 through 10 is tough, but as we adjust and we take a look at as we take a look at all these programs dynamically, then you all will be able to you guys will all be able to react to that in real time. And then I know right down at the bottom, you'll be able to see your fund balance as it relates to your policy over time. That'll be front of mind at all times as well. So that's in big picture, kind of the new format of the CIP model. And Maddie, if there's additional things you'd want to know.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. This is the model that we'd like to use moving forward when we have our governing body retreat. It's more interactive and we'll update real time so we can see what effect certain improvements have on the performance of the funds. And I will note that, like Jack said, everything in blue are sort of those new improvements that would be able to be funded should the city council elect to have a special sales tax. And so everything that's in that blue box is about 22 million, 23 million. What's currently programmed in our CIP existing is just shy of 34 million. So we're talking about a significant amount of capital projects for infrastructure and amenities for the community. So that's a really exciting thing. So I think with that, we can maybe go back to the PowerPoint. Unless there are any questions specifically about what you saw in the model. So that's a lot of data.
Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I just may not have been tracking it, but I think we were saying roughly 1.4 million from incremental 1% sales tax, and some of those are more than $1 million a year, or 1.4 million. Is there all additional funding sources involved in that blue box?
Yes, with our current CIP that we adopted through the budget, there is a bond issuance in this year and then also in 2025.
Okay. So that's the existing funding plus this incremental.
Yes, sir. You got it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just for some numbers, in the city, we've seen a really healthy growth in sales tax over the last 10 years. On average, our sales tax has grown 11%, which is pretty incredible. And in the model for modeling purposes, we used a growth rate of 6% just to be on the conservative side. I do know that there was a question about the grocery tax. If that affects us, it does not. Local taxes are excluded from that. That is state tax only.
And I think now probably as good a time as any, I had asked a question after a previous conversation about our rough sales tax percentages, like our pull versus push, what it is coming from outside the city of Basehor to, if we're helping spread that cost.
Yeah, we did evaluate the pull factor. Jack, if you want to talk about what we discovered through the reports that we reviewed.
Sure. So the state does publish annually the pull factors for communities across the state. As you know, it's a ratio of how whether your residents are majority spending their dollars here versus are they spending dollars outside in the community. If you have a pull factor of 1 or greater, then that's more dollars coming in than out, and then less than 1, vice versa. Currently, I think Basehor was at 0.42 So currently more dollars are leaving. But certainly, as retail base comes in, certainly you could expect, more dollars staying here and with your economic development efforts, that would certainly help.
Vernon, do you have anything, sir?
I do not.
Sherry? Good, thank you. You're good.
Yeah, I'll have questions offline sometime.
Well, sorry, I think I jumped in. Do you have other presentation?
We do, Mayor, if it's okay, if we
Sure.
finish up the PowerPoint and then we'll take additional questions.
Sure. So if you're comfortable with the sales tax idea, Mitch is gonna come up next to talk about what the next steps and mechanics look like under the different possible paths you have ahead of you. So if you're ready for that, I'll turn it over to Mitch.
Mitch Walter, Gilmore and Bell. This is a little bit short on legal jumbo and longer on policy as far as what the city wants to do with its sales tax if it wants to impose. So anytime there's less legalese involved, I think the better, right? If we could just go back up maybe to that one slide regarding the percent of the 2 and the 1%. Okay, yep, one more forward. So under state law, cities can impose up to 2% for general, 2% sales taxes for general purposes and a 1% special sales tax. By law, that special sales tax has to sunset within 10 years of imposition. The city could also sunset a general sales tax or a special sales tax at any time by ordinance. So you have a lot of control. Different if you're a county, you actually have to have an election to repeal the sales tax, but that doesn't apply here. So the city has a lot of flexibility to create its own facts with whatever it wants to do. You currently have a 1% general sales tax, so you could impose up to a 1% additional general sales tax or up to a 1% special sales tax. I say up to 1% because you can do that incrementally. You could impose a half cent, a 0.45 cent. I think you saw some of the other tax rates were not all even. So the city again has more flexibility in just how much additional tax that we want to impose. Okay, moving back to that last slide. This is all just for informational purposes only, set out to just give a little bit of background. So if you wanted to impose a sales tax, it would have to be done via an election. In Kansas, you can either do that with a walk-in traditional, folks show up on a date certain and cast their ballots, or they can do a mail ballot election. I think here in the metro area, mail ballot elections are more common than walk-in elections. There's an additional requirement. You have to work with your county election officer and the Kansas Secretary of State to okay the mail ballot election plan if the city were to choose that option. So that just adds an additional step. For practical purposes, there may be a few additional things that are required of the city, but that's basically on the county election officer takes care of that with the preparation of the mail ballot election plan. So there's not a lot of additional work required of the city with respect to the mail ballot. The imposition of a sales tax as it relates to timing can only be done at quarterly intervals. So January, April, July, and October. And this Department of Revenue needs 90 days notice. So for that purpose, it becomes kind of important to work a little bit backwards when you're trying to figure out, okay, when are we going to impose this tax? When are we going to start spending money? When revenue is going to start flowing back? It takes about 2 months from the imposition of a sales tax for when that money goes up to revenue and then comes back to the city. So there's about a 2-month lag time from the imposition. And I think just the next slide. So this is just a hypothetical calendar just for informational purposes only. You're kind of working backwards. If you want to impose the tax by October of 2023, you would have to send revenue all the packet containing all the election documents prior to July 1st, that's your 90 days. So in order to do that, you would have to have your election sometime around late May, early June. And in order to do that, you would have to satisfy some of the prerequisite steps where, of course, certainly most importantly, you actually decide you want to have a sales tax and put that in a resolution. Then you work with your county election officer to make sure that your date certain for your election is going to work. By law, there cannot be more than one special purpose election at which someone in the city that would vote on this question, but also run on another question. So that's just a matter of working with the county election officer. As you would expect, sort of first in time is first in right. So if you're first in line and you get your day secured, then someone else has to figure out a different. And then you have to work with the election officer for Leavenworth County in order to do the mail ballot election plan. Again, that's mostly on the county. And then this is the main legal requirement is you have to publish your notice of election twice. We work with you on that to make sure that you fit within the statutory time frame. It can't be too long before or too short up to the election. That's just a matter of calendaring it up correctly. But as you can see there, it's about, a 3 to 4 month process once you decide you want to start until you're actually ready to have your election. And then after that, that's just administrative to get it all packaged up and sent off. And so really it is, but here it's January 11th. So it's about kind of a 9-month process to when you actually impose the sales tax and start to see the funds. So again, informational purposes only, but thought it might be kind of helpful to look and see what it looks like. I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Anybody have any questions, or do you have some first, Maddie?
No, sir. I would just say that concludes our presentation. We stand ready to answer your questions if we can, take your questions and follow back up with you if we need to, and also receive any additional feedback that you have. But thank you for all your feedback that we've received to date, and we stand for questions.
Vernon, do you have anything, sir? Do not. Sherry?
No. Sorry, I do. I have a couple. On the logistics piece, just confirming I'm tracking the possibilities. That's a special election, can't be on the same day. Would there be possibility to coordinate with the existing election that'll take place in November of 23?
Yes, yes, you can have the question can be added to the general election.
And then, so that would put our first available revenue coming in January.
Right. I do not believe you'd be able to do a mail ballot election connection with the general election.
Sure. Just wondering from an additional incremental cost to the city versus those 2 months of, well, I guess 3 months of no revenue coming in from it, but not counted on until the 2024 budget already anyway, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, Councilmember Maples?
Was to confirm that we aren't anticipating none of these projects require funding earlier than 2024
That's
anyway,
correct.
because we funded with our existing fund balances.
That's
for
correct.
23.
That's correct.
It's just part of the consideration for me of, timing, and do we just tack it on? Because there's incremental expense for holding a special election, whether it is mail-in or walk-in.
Yeah, there are some fees and expenses that are associated with it from the county. You won't see anything you'll want to know with respect to that, but the county will try to do a little bit to.
Okay.
And if it doesn't pass, that's.
Right.
Anything else?
I mean, a broader discussion on different methods, preferences, timing. So I lean towards a sales tax that allows citizens the opportunity to vote on whether they want that incremental funding. I think it is important that we move forward with some infrastructure projects, but that'll at least give us a pulse of the level of interest. And then, I think overall for those first 5 years, if we do the plan that was lined out based on the current pavement index, we're going to use most of that 1.4 a year towards the pavement costs. So then it's really those out years that we need to figure out what that funding's going towards, so we make sure the question covers it and is something that citizens would be interested in, right? That's all. Sorry.
No, good questions.
You don't want to say that right now. Okay. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Appreciate it.
Mayor, if I might just ask, so from a staff perspective, is this something that you want us to continue working on? I suppose from a feedback standpoint, what, if anything else, would you like staff to do, or what would our next steps from a direction look like?
I will speak on that topic. I concur that I like to go down the route of let's take a look at the sales tax direction versus a mill levy direction. And I know there's steps involved with that. but I like the general use and the way that's spread amongst more people. So I would lean more towards that direction than the levy increase. Personal opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And with a sunset would be my preference. Whichever way we do it, I would like to see a sunset in there. And
I would definitely be in support of the sales tax over any mill rate increase for sure. I guess the only concern I'd have would be the simple fact that if it doesn't pass, what of those projects is going to get cut out? I think that probably needs to be clear as well, you know, and because if you're asking constituents to vote on an increase in this sales tax, what are they buying, right? Or more importantly, if they vote no, what is it that they're going to lose? I mean, I think that that's kind of something that needs to be open and as stated, that is it when the deterioration of the roads start going bad, that you can simply go back to, you guys voted no on this. So, or is it, where is this all going to stack up in 2024 and beyond? What is going to be set aside for future years? And if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And in the model, we have it shaded in blue, all the projects that are contingent upon us receiving those sales tax dollars. We can certainly lump them together. We have this much money allocated for projects of roadway improvements, trails, parks, police, those sorts of things, so that it's out there that if we're not able to do this, this governing body will have to make a policy decision about what projects are going to move forward and what won't.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Sherry.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in sales tax versus mill.
But I think you know what my policy is or what my thoughts are on any kind of increase in any kind of tax.
Absolutely.
Avoid them. That's the word.
I think we're good on that. I think you have the consensus to keep moving forward.
So I think what I'm hearing is staff will come back with additional information on the mechanics should you desire to actually move forward, because as you know, there would be a significant communications plan that needs to be accompanied, that needs to accompany any action such as this. And we do have some very stringent state laws around not having vote yes campaigns. So we'll have some education around messaging and things that we should say and shouldn't when we're discussing if the council should decide to actually move forward with placing the question on a ballot.
Thank you. We have the need for executive session tonight.
We do not.
We do not. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
I have a motion to have a second.
I'll second.
Ty.
Aye.
Vernon. Aye. Hayden.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you for everybody for coming.